When was like AI really like a thing that people started to think that it was going to revolutionize how we did business? And then how did you get into this arena?
That is a great question. In 2016, I used to run conferences in machine learning and big data in San Francisco for Google, Microsoft, Netflix, Amazon, and all the big players back then. The whole scene was kind of rudimentary. It's kind of new. People were still using R squared. People were using SQL, Hadoop. TensorFlow was only just coming into the conversation around 2017, which is a Google database of different machine learning algorithms. So the terminology AI wasn't really around then. It was still big data, machine learning, deep learning. These were the terminologies that people were actually discussing what is now the foundation of AI as we know it today. So I jumped into it about 11 years ago. Is that right? No, yeah, no, 9 years ago. 9 years ago. Sorry, terrible maths. I rely too much on AI. But the situation was that I was going to these amazing events. I was organizing these amazing events in San Francisco, in Boston, in the US with all these big players. And I just knew at the time. I knew at the time that the application was going to change, because even back in 2017, the technology to analyze tons of different images like facial recognition and find patterns within those faces was there. It was in deep learning phase. It was incredibly expensive. These corporations were really the only people that had the power to do that. And what's really happened in the last 9 years is, as these corporations have taken ownership of building these large language models, they've also democratized that to the consumer masses to make money. And that's what OpenAI did. I mean, there's a lot of dispute and discussion around OpenAI doing that, as they initially had launched as a not-for-profit open foundation. And I've seen that people quote that Sam Altman has stole the internet and is selling it back to us.
Fair. I don't fault him for that, but like that's a nice way to put it.
So yeah, to answer your question, I first got involved in the space 9 years ago. Then I went into a bunch of other stuff. So I was working for Walmart in China in e-commerce. And China is the leader of e-commerce globally. Their system is heavily digitized. Their adoption of technology is way beyond anything that you generally see in the West. They're like 70-year-old grandmas are using touch phones easily. And it's because all the technology is made there very cheaply. So their level of adoption is way higher than in the West. I think even in 2016, 80% of all online transactions happened on the mobile phone. But that was nowhere near that figure in 2016 in outside of China. That was in China. And right now they've really got a cashless society, a full cashless society right now in China. So I moved to go work in the e-commerce space for Walmart. I ended up then doing global marketing for a very large telephone communications company. And then I went to work with maybe the, I guess, second most famous e-commerce business in the world, Alibaba. Okay, so I went to work for Alibaba in e-commerce, and then I left. And now the reason that I got back into the AI is quite interesting, because the adoption of technology in China is generally way higher than the West, though people wouldn't think it. They're really much more digitally native as a peoples than anywhere outside of China. Again, because all the technology is made there. So it's cheaper and more affordable and therefore more accessible to people, so they can adopt it quicker. ChatGPT or AI has one of the highest adoption rates is in China. So I used to run a business after I left Alibaba that was doing marketing for Chinese companies. And what I noticed was that they were adopting ChatGPT very fast because it was an equalizer. Jake is expensive because he speaks English natively. So why don't we just hire a young person in China and give them an AI that's cheaper than Jake? Because we don't need to rely on Jake's ability to speak English natively anymore. So I first saw ChatGPT was hitting my cash flow. And one time I was speaking at a conference in Singapore about this technology, about automating with AI, because I got really heavily into the automation process with AI about 2 years ago. And someone came up to me and was like, well, why don't you just do that full time? Now, at the time, I didn't have the necessity to do it because I was living nice based upon my e-commerce agency to help these brands position and create their position in different markets. Okay. But then once my market share was being eaten alive by ChatGPT, I realized the necessity to go full into this, fully automate my own business, which I did. And then I started selling those solutions to similar style of agencies. And that's how Stop AI came into existence. Really now for about, I guess, 18 months full time on Stop AI. Yeah.
How long ago was it when you started to notice that AI was eating into your business at the time?
2023,
So
early
not that long,
2023.
not that long ago.
Yeah, 2 years. So I used to work with Alex McGregor. I think I just mentioned that guy already on the podcast, but he's a copywriter. He also worked in copywriting, and suddenly people aren't picking up the phone to ask him to write as much because they've got access to a tool that does the heavy operations of lifting for them. Back then, there was still like, it was a source of truth, and AI did hallucinate much more than it does now. So people would use ChatGPT and think that everything that they got in the article was a legitimate fact, but they still used that over somebody that had 10 plus years of copywriting and research experience. So it was at that point in 2023 that both myself and my associate, because we were working on some projects together, realized we are going to have to change. Like, we knew back in early 2023 that we were going to have to change, because fundamentally we had started to utilize it and our customers had started to utilize it. And effectively at that point we could produce more or less the same quality of results, which then impacted obviously our cash flow negatively.